Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wonder how much of what we think we know about someone after just a few minutes is actually true? Like when you meet a new colleague or your friend's partner, you instantly form an opinion, right? Today, we're diving into a fascinating study that asks if the way you describe someone actually matters for how accurately others can guess your personality. So imagine trying to guess how a stranger would answer a bunch of personality questions based on a short video of them. This is exactly what researchers did. They wanted to know if certain types of personality questions make it harder or easier for people to guess accurately. The big question here is about something called evaluative items. These are personality statements that describe someone in a clearly good or bad light. Like, is this person usually fair, or does this person often start arguments? The common idea in psychology is that when questions are like this, people tend to answer them in a way that makes them look good, kind of like putting on a bit of a show. This means when others try to guess their answers, they miss the mark more often. Think about it. If someone asks, "Are you a fair person?" you're probably more likely to say yes, even if you have your moments. This self-protective behavior, as scientists call it, can mess with how accurately others can judge you. But here is where this study gets interesting. Most of the research on this has used words like fair or talkative, which can be a bit abstract. What if the statements are super concrete? Like, does this person sometimes park in a disabled spot? Or does this person secretly read someone else's diary? Would that make a difference? And a key part of this study, the people guessing weren't just giving their own impression. They were specifically told to guess how the person in the video would answer about themselves. To find out, the researchers used an app called Who Knows. Basically, people watched short videos of strangers talking for about 30 seconds. Then, they had to guess how that person answered a bunch of really specific personality questions. They did this over 340,000 times, with thousands of people guessing on hundreds of different questions, and there were about 75 people being guessed about. The app basically turns it into a game, giving feedback on how accurate your guesses were. Imagine seeing someone and then having to predict if they secretly read someone else's diary. The researchers then looked at how well the guesses matched what the person actually said they'd do. They called this self-report prediction accuracy. Now, what did they find? Well, it turns out the old idea that evaluative items make predictions harder didn't really hold up here. In fact, for questions that were on a scale, like a rating from 1 to 10, the more evaluative the item was, meaning it was more positive or negative, the better people were at guessing. This is the opposite of what many other studies found. It was like saying, you know what, if this person is likely to do something really good or really bad, I am actually better at predicting that. But this only happened for the rating scale questions. For the simple yes or no questions, evaluativeness didn't seem to make a difference in how accurate people were. So, why this difference? The researchers came up with a couple of cool ideas. First, remember those abstract questions versus concrete ones we talked about. The items in this study were mostly very concrete. This might mean people had less room to be evasive or self-protective in their answers. When something is super specific, it is harder to dodge. Second, and this is key, the judges were told to predict the target's self-report, not just to give their own impression. This means they might have been trying to figure out how that specific person would answer, considering if they tended to paint themselves in a good light. They even did a little experiment where they looked at how favorable people's self-reports were and how favorable the predictions of their self-reports were. They found that people who tended to describe themselves more favorably also tended to have others predict them describing themselves more favorably. This suggests people picking up on those self-protective tendencies. This is like saying, if I know you generally try to come across well, I'll predict you'll say you like puppies more, even if I don't know if you actually do. The researchers think this predicting the self-protection might be why evaluative concrete questions helped accuracy. It's like judges can use the evaluative nature of the question to inform their guess about how the target is likely to respond. The difference between rating scales and yes or no questions is also really interesting. They suggest that on a scale, you can subtly lean towards a more favorable answer without it being too obvious. But with a yes or no question, you have to make a clearer choice, which might reduce the impact of subtle self-protection and make it harder for judges to use that evaluative hint. What is also surprising is that many other things they looked at, like how observable a behavior is or the time frame it refers to, didn't seem to have a consistent effect on how accurate predictions were. This suggests that maybe in these very specific, concrete question settings, the evaluativeness is the star of the show. Now, it is important to remember this study had some limitations. The questions were very specific and weren't like typical personality tests with broad adjectives. Also, the instruction to predict self-reports was key, and it is hard to separate that from the specific types of questions used. Future studies could try to disentangle these things more clearly. Imagine testing people with broad adjectives and concrete statements, and under both give your impression and predict their self-report instructions. So, what is the big takeaway? It seems that when we're trying to guess someone's specific behaviors and they're being judged on very concrete questions, our ability to guess accurately might actually get better when the question is more evaluative. This is a twist on what we've thought before. It highlights how context matters so much in psychology, the type of question. The instructions you get, all of it changes the game. It's not just about the personality trait itself, but how it's asked and what we're asked to do with that information. It really makes you think about how we form impressions and how accurate we can actually be. What do you all think about this? Does it change how you view those first impressions you make? Let me know in the comments below. If you found this dive into personality perception interesting, be sure to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to RUBIN'S Mind Lab for more science breakdowns, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next exploration into the fascinating world of the human mind. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.